Just as DeBacco finished this sentence, a smoke alarm began to bellow and clang so that the hotel guests would know to evacuate. Exiting by an emergency exit and watching as the motel emptied of guests, DeBacco smiled and tossed his cigar into a nearby snowbank. It wasn't such a bad wintertime wedding. All right, we're looking for all sorts of clauses here. Just as DeBacco finished this sentence, just as DeBacco finished this sentence, this is an introductory dependent clause. Just as is functioning as a subordinate conjunction. DeBacco finished this sentence. When did the smoke alarm begin? Just as DeBacco finished this sentence. This entire clause is functioning adverbially, a subordinate adverbial clause, an adverbial subordinate clause. DeBacco, action verb, direct object within this clause. A smoke alarm, an alarm began what? To bellow and clang. To bellow, clang, to clang. It's a two-piece infinitive, to bellow and to clang, so that the hotel guests would know to evacuate. Here's a subordinate conjunction, two words working together, so that the hotel guests, subject, would know what to evacuate. Here's another another infinitive, would know. It's functioning as a noun, direct object. Going back to the initial main clause, a smoke alarm began what? To bellow and clang. Why did they bellow and clang? So that the hotel guests, would know to evacuate. The entire infinitive phrase that starts at to bellow works all the way to evacuate at the end of the sentence, and that is an infinitive phrase functioning as the direct object of began. Exiting by an emergency exit and watching as the motel emptied. We've got another verbal here, exiting how or why by an emergency exit. That's telling where. So this verbal ends up being a verbal phrase. We've got that coordinating conjunction showing us a second verbal, watching as the motel emptied of guests. Here we've got a verbal that is modified by a subordinate clause, hotel, action verb of guests. This ends up being a participial phrase. We've got two participial phrases. Exiting by an emergency exit, talking about DeBacco, modifying the subject of the main clause, and watching as the motel emptied of guests, that's also modifying DeBacco. He smiled, action verb, coordinating conjunction, tossed his cigar into a nearby snowbank. That's describing the placement of the cigar. We'll say that that's an adjectival prepositional phrase. I suppose you could talk about how he tossed it as well into a nearby snowbank. And then we've got this last sentence. Subject was, linking verb with a little negative adverb. Such a bad wintertime wedding. It wasn't a bad wedding. This is the predicate noun. Wintertime is describing wedding. Bad, that indefinite article, all modifying wedding. Such is an interesting word. Such can be a pronoun, it can be an adjective, or maybe we'll just call that a little determiner, something like an article. It's such a wedding, such wedding. I'm going to just draw that to wedding as well. And that's the end of our story. It's a true story, by the way. The names more or less have been changed to protect, we'll say, to protect the innocent. By the way, if we wanted to talk about who's been filming this, hey Spuds. Spuds has been giving me a hand throughout the movie. And Abigail's around here someplace, but she's a bit camera shy. Hey Spuds. Good boy, good boy. That's Spuds.